Today we're talking about this one, number 49, the Diversion. Now, avoiding the glare and the ultimate stuff, yeah, it's the one with Tobias turning into the Alsatian. Book 49, the last Tobias book. Now, before we actually dip into this one, I have to do a couple of things. Firstly, I need to make a correction. The last book was book 48. And at the very start, because at the start of these books, it says, where does it say it? The author wishes to thank, for example, Lisa Hartgrader for existence in preparing this manuscript, which is a giveaway for who the ghostwriter is, in which case this one is Lisa Hartgrader. At the start of book 48, it thanks Lisa Hartgrader, so automatically I thought, that must mean that she wrote that one. Apparently no, it was an error in the book, and it was actually Kimberly Morris, whose previous book was book 38, a 10 out of 10. So Kimberly Morris has written a total of 2 books and has got a total of 20 out of 20. Because I'm going to do a list of ghostwriters ranked after all is said and done. I think she's going to be somewhere near the top. So apologies for getting that wrong. It's the book's fault. It's never my fault, it's something else's fault. Also, all this has come off. I've been de-haired, and I'm going to be doing Movember. So I'm raising money for men's cancers, so prostate cancer, testicular cancer. So I'll be growing a moustache over the course of November. And if you want to help me raise money, there is a link in the description which goes to a Movember page, so the money that you donate goes in there and then goes off to charity. So if you want to help donate towards prostate cancer, testicular cancer, fighting against those horrific diseases, then please consider donating to my Movember page. And we'll see this little moustache growing. Right, so book 49. We've just come off the back of 2 10 out of 10s. A couple of fantastic books. How does this one hold up? Lisa Hartgrader is back after book 44. I thought she was back last time. She wasn't, but she is now. She is back now. The Unexpected, her previous book, was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was surprisingly good. How does this one hold up? The Diversion. The book starts, and it's 2 whole chapters of just filler. This is oh, for God's sake, fiancé. This book is 160 pages long, which for Animorphs is very long. You think, oh Christ, they must be putting a lot in this, but the first 2 chapters are just the same as every other Tobias book. Which, to an extent, you expect in Animorphs, but recently, in the most recent books, the books start new, fresh. We don't get the whole my name is Dorothy anymore. We jump straight into the action, which I really approve of. But this book, the whole first 2 chapters is Tobias hunting for food, struggling to get the food, and then Rachel feeds him McDonald's. Maybe there's something below the surface there, but that's basically every Tobias book so far. So a complete waste of 2 chapters. So chapter 3, though, we finally do get into the meat of the book. We finally start. They're in a meeting in Cassie's barn, and apparently that everyone's been asked for DNA, blood samples, effectively. Oh bloody hell! My thing's run out of power. Seriously, I've got a gag lined up involving this thing. Great time for it to run out of power. Let's put it on the charger for a little while. How's that sound? I'm now without my little backlight. What I would do usually is delay this video until later, but I've got a football match to film at 3 o'clock. So in order to get this video up for 6, I need to do it before then, and I need to make the video, import it into the computer, edit it, export it, and upload it, which will probably take me to 3 o'clock. So I've got no choice. I've got to fit a gag into this fucking video, including the fucking morphing cube. I can't do the video any later, and the fucking morphing cube breaks. Fucking first world problems. They fucking suck. Cassie reports to the other Animorphs that a bunch of people broke into the labs at the gardens where her mother works. And instead of taking anything of particular value, they took specific blood samples, that of tiger, grizzly, rhino. They were asking for red-tailed hawk blood as well, and went a bit mental when they couldn't find it. So of course the Animorphs say, those are some of our most prominent battle morphs. I mean, yeah, the rhino is in there. They have used it a few times, so yeah. They established that the Yeerks are after DNA, and this is a problem. The Animorphs then discuss, hold on, has anybody had their blood taken recently? Because the Yeerks will be trying to establish where this DNA matches to humans, and the Animorphs make that obvious jump to, oh, so they suspect we're humans now. So Visser 1, for whatever reason, now thinks that the Animorphs are humans. He's finally come round to that thought. And he's having a smart idea. Use DNA. It's a pretty foolproof method, assuming you know how morphing works, which he probably does, because he does it. So, well done, Visser 1. You've actually done something fucking clever. Round of applause! Round of applause for the Visser. Oh. Mate, take it in, that applause. That's for you. Congratulations. You're not the completest dunce in the world. The big problem, of course, is that if their DNA is taken by the Yeerks, they can be found. And they don't know if Rachel's got DNA somewhere in a blood sample because of... She went to hospital when she had the sickness back in book 29, The Sickness, which shouldn't have happened, but we'll just gloss over that plot error for the sake of this one. But yeah, they're a bit aggrieved about this. But on page 19, there's a funny little bit. Yeah, Rachel shook her head. But we can't take that chance. If the Yeerks find me, they find us all. They'll slide a Yeerk into my head, and then we're dead, or worse, infested. And so are our families, and everyone we care about. And the Hawk Bajir, said Axe. Really, Axe? Everyone we care about is under threat. And the Hawk Bajir? Yeah, fuck you, Axe. Fuck you. But then he does continue. And the Free Hawk Bajir, they have been forced to relocate once in spite of our assistance. So, you ever get it? They do a lot in film and drama. And it is about drama. You don't speak like a normal person. You don't walk up to someone and says, my dad has cancer. No, in film you do this. My father, he has cancer. It adds that drama. You don't speak like a normal person. You say the person's name, pause, and then detail. There's a fire in the house. Everything's burning down. Translation to film. My house is on fire. No, it'd be my house. It's on fire. So maybe Axe isn't saying, oh, we don't care about the Hawk Bajir. Maybe he's doing that. Rather than saying, and the Hawk Bajir will need relocating. He's saying, and the Hawk Bajir, they need relocating. Maybe that's it, I don't know. I honestly get the impression he doesn't care about the Hawk Bajir, so it's probably just that, rather than just dramatic flair. So the plan now is to check every blood bank and find out which one's the most secretive, because that's where the Yeerks will be. Why would the Yeerks register? If the Yeerks are doing this in secret, why are they registering as a blood bank? If they're going around stealing blood samples, why would they register? It's like a bloody, I don't know, some back alley dentist who gets barbed wire, wraps it around your tooth and just whacks it out. There you go, mate. Saves you on dentist bills, right? He's not going to be on the dentist registry, is he? He's not going to sign the forms. Yeah, I'm registered dentist. Location, the back alley behind Toys R Us. No, he's not going to do that. He's not. Why are the Yerks going through the admin of putting themselves on the system? So they find out that there's one that's got all this alien proof, or some. It was slightly more difficult to hack into the system, so they just assume, well, that must be the one. And they go there, and of course it's the one. And it's a building that's just like a big concrete box with no windows, the shady little thing. And the circus is in town, which they think, oh, we'll point that out because that's going to become convenient. They go into a back alley. Rachel morphs to elephant, causes a bit of a ruckus, and the plot conveniences just keep flowing. They know that there are GLEAT biofilters on the doors. How do they know? Well, they just know. Very convenient. They say that there's a back entrance and there's a front entrance, but there's GLEAT biofilters on both. So how do they solve this problem? Rachel has morphed elephant. With a massive trunk, Rachel hurled the no parking sign like a javelin towards the open doors. Pop, pop, sparks flew. A cloud of smoke puffed out from the open doors. The no parking sign clanked to the floor. A computerized voice droned through the smoke. Bio filter deactivated. Immediate shutdown, immediate shutdown. I'm sorry, what? So there are all you know is there are GLEAT, but I was drinking last night with Raptor and I've only just recently woke up. I am in a rush today, so I can't fucking speak 'cause I'm partly hungover. But they know that there are GLEAT biofilters in these doors, so Rachel knows, right, parking sign, I need to aim it for the door, and when it hits, it will disable the system, and the system will tell us it's disabled so that we know. I'm sorry, but plot convenience is not my favourite thing, and I don't like it. It makes me very angry. Okay? I'm actually really sad, and I'm offended. And you know what? When you get offended by things these days, according to Twitter, I'm allowed to cancel things and get people fired from their jobs. I'm offended by this plot convenience. Cancel Lisa Harkraider. I'm sorry, but you've offended me. And that's cardinal sin these days, isn't it? In fact, in Britain, we do have hate crimes. So I'm going to call the police, right? And if you're going to cry saying, oh, that's unfair, well, sorry, that's the world you fucking asked for, isn't it? I've been on Twitter too long, I'm sorry. So they go into this blood bank, and they go in as, well, Rachel's outside going back to the circus, which is nicely and conveniently there for her to go back to, and the others are flies, and they fly in, find a cleaning cupboard that's big enough for them to demorph and then remorph as Hawkbajir, so they're all just sort of camped in this cupboard, and Marco morphs skin-tight outfits. Which book was it where they morphed jeans? Was it book 47? Where they said, we're good enough now at morphing clothes that we're able to morph, like, jeans and stuff. No, we're back to bicycle shorts and shit now. So this book has fucking everything, I tell you. This book has everything. Marco has now got a blue, must be the exact same shade as the blue band Hawkbajir's bands. Because they're like, oh, Marco, how convenient, you've got the blue shirt on. So they rip that up and tie it around themselves with duct tape. So not only is it exactly the same tone, the same hue as the blue bands on the official blue band Hawkbajir, but also the official ones must have it taped on with duct tape because they're just going around with these things strapped on like proper DIY, and nobody bats an eyelid. Oh, dearie me. And apparently, according to how things go, there is an actual group of blue band Hawkbajir there. So they are in the building, and this guard at the door just automatically believes that these new ones that have come up, these new blue bands, with fucking makeshift blue bands from torn up bicycle fucking, I don't know. The book just assumes that Hork-Bajir have absolutely no facial recognition abilities. I met someone not at home, on the way back from the barber's yesterday, and I hadn't seen him for years, but as soon as I set eyes on him, I was like, I know that person. I have seen him around before. It's been a while, but I instantly recognise him. Us humans are very good at that, and it's an innate ability. Humans mostly look the same, I'm sorry to say, unless you count like hairstyles or whatever. We mostly look the same. So it's an amazing skill that our brain has to just find those distinct little differences that marks people out. Apparently Hork-Bajir don't have that because they just walk in as any old Hork-Bajir and everyone just... with shitty bands on and nobody bats a fucking eyelid. I don't buy it. Hork-Bajir are a social race, so they probably have at least similar facial recognition skills that we do. But yeah, let's just conveniently move along through the plot. They get into this big sealed metal door and they knock out the guard and close the door behind them. And there's this big screen, big like map of the town, and there are flashing bits on it. And Axe demorphs and goes to sort out the computer stuff, diddly diddly. And then he finds out that they've got a match. There's like a flashing orange bit, you know, like in all the cliche TV shows and films and shit. And it turns out that it's somebody called Lauren. Guess who that is, everyone? Tobias's mother. So he's a bit stunned and shocked and perplexed by this happenstance. But just before they're able to erase her data from the system, in comes a bunch of real blue band, the ones we talked about earlier, real blue band Hork-Bajir, with the official, not the Chinese freaking off-brand shite, the official American-made worker. And in comes Gran, with a fucking walking stick. She comes in, Granny Controller, as she's referred to quite kindly in the book. And she says, I've got you trapped, Animorphs. You're fucked, me laddos. And why she doesn't just kill them immediately, she just has to wait around for this expositor, I can't fucking speak. Dialogue of the expository nature. I probably, words are difficult. Just don't, sometimes we just need to be like the Buddhist monks and just say nothing. Nah, fuck it, I'm going to say what I fucking want. There's a massive scuffle, and apparently the blue bands are just as fucking useless as normal Hork-Bajir. There's quite literally no difference. It's just that they have new fashion. They're just as shit, so the animals defeat them. And then they run out, unable to get rid of Lauren's data on the thing. And Rachel does a Deus Ex Machina because they can't get through the door because Granny Controller disabled the security system. So she's about to kill them, but no, Rachel in Grizzly Morph comes in with a forklift, crashes through the door at just the right time. Just in the nick of time. I fucking hate it. So they rush out, but there's a whole bunch of explosions and things blasting. They just about get away. But now they've got quite a problem. They know that they've left blood everywhere. There was this part where, for instance, during the course of this battle, Marco had, in his Hork-Bajir morph, half his face ripped off, essentially, which was pretty gruesome. Yeah, it was a pretty gruesome scene. Lisa Harkrader does like her gruesome bits. The same in book 44. There's a lot of gruesome stuff. Remember the post leg? The post leg! Oh, grim. Yeah, we get more of that. And so there's blood everywhere. And so now we're just assuming how morphing works, okay? And there's a fair bit of this in this book. And to an extent, it's believable, but you have to make a lot of assumptions in order to believe it. So, apparently, when blood from a morph is spilt, it carries with it the blood of your original body, and your original body carries within it the DNA of every animal you acquire, which in a way makes sense, but your DNA would be just, I don't know, it'd be weird and jumbled and... Yeah, I don't know how it works. This is the thing about this book. It can make sense, but you just have to make these big assumptions. So I can't criticise it, but at the same time, I'm confused by it. That's basically it, yeah. So the Animorphs now think, we've dropped our blood everywhere, therefore our families can be found. Because just like Lauren was found through Tobias's blood, somehow. Yeah, so Tobias must have dropped blood somewhere, and they used that DNA, the human DNA within the hawk blood, to locate a close match to Lauren, who is his biological mother. So therefore, the Animorphs' families can also be tracked. So the Animorphs decide, what the ruddy heck do we do? And the obvious answer is, well, we're basically fucked now, because if they find our families, they find us, and our cover is blown. So yeah, there's no choice. We have to get out of here. We have to abandon our lives, much like Marco did a few books earlier. So they decide that they are going to tell their families. What are they going to do with the families? By the way, they've got Eric King in on this meeting. He's there in the barn with them. He's just sort of sitting there, like, spying probably. But he's in there, and they're saying, well, what do we do with all these people? Where can we take them that's safe? And the answer is, okay, decision made. They'll be safest in the new Hawk-Bajir Valley. Marco's parents are already there, and the Yeerks think they destroyed it. Firstly, no. The Yeerks were defeated. Why would the Yeerks assume that they had destroyed the group that they had been defeated by? No, Jake. In fact, why haven't the Yeerks found these Hawk-Bajir? Remember book 13? Taxons. Strong scent. That they were chasing down Jara and Ket with Taxons who were just sniffing through and chasing them that way. Why don't they just do that again? A whole freaking colony of Hawk-Bajir somewhere in the Californian woods. It wouldn't take them that long. It's not like you've got no Taxons at hand. Yeerks, come on, guys. I take back the applause from earlier for Visser 1. You fail, Sonny Jim. You fail. But now they just... Oh, we were defeated by this Hawk-Bajir, but I'm sure we won. Therefore, they don't exist. Don't bother finding them. Don't bother. It's not as if they could be housing the Andalite bandits, which are now no longer Andalite bandits, but human bandits? Just humans. So the first thing they do, since they're in Cassie's barn, the first target is... Target's not the right word, is it? Walter and Michelle. Cassie's parents. So, instead of... Right, put it this way. How would you approach this situation? You're going to tell your parents about everything, okay? How would you do it? Would you come up to them and say, Mother, I am your daughter, and I have something to tell you? Or would you send some freaking weirdo in a bird body to thought speak to her and just send her these cryptic messages and freak her out? What the fuck are you doing, Animorphs? No, Tobias, get the fuck back here, send Cassie in, start it off nice and slow. No, the Animorphs don't do that. They hit with the hard stuff first and then come in with the nicer details later. Okay, pretend you're getting a divorce, or you want a divorce. You're a bloke, and your woman doesn't wash the dishes, so you're like, fuck it, this ain't right, I'm divorcing her. And instead of, coming up to her and saying, well, I mean, how do you even bloody start a conversation like that nicely? I have something to tell you. Now, I've been feeling this way for quite some time, and, you build up slowly, gently. What you don't do is she turns up one day back at home and you she finds all her stuff like wrapped up and thrown in the bin. No, not if you want to do it nicely. Maybe if you want to do it whilst being a dick, but I don't think that's the Animorphs' intentions to be a dick. You know, start it nice and gentle. What's with this trying to fucking freak her out? Dear God, have you no subtlety, Animorphs? It's not only Cassie's parents, they do it with Rachel's mother as well. Rachel just morphs Grizzly in her house and gets her to turn around and see her. What? That whole scene, by the way, was trying to be funny, and it just felt jarring. This really big part of the series, really important stuff. And they're talking about how Jordan and Sarah, Rachel's sisters, aren't freaked out by Axe at all. They think he's a Pokemon and they start riding him. It's just like, not even the stupidest of kids would react like that, surely. Surely not. Yeah, that whole scene was a bit irritating, but not too bad. The Cassie's parents scene was a bit better, because we actually got some genuine emotion. Book 45, one of its biggest sins, was that Marco told his dad everything, but we never actually saw that. He just went from one chapter to the other. I told him everything. Everything. This book does a little bit better than The Ultimate Sin. Because we do get those original moments of Cassie's parents being like, oh, what's all this? What's going on? We actually get that reaction that we didn't get in book 45. But then once again, at some point during the chapter, Cassie just inner monologues. And then we told them about the Yerks and the Andalites and all that other stuff. And then we moved on to the next part of the mission. No, I want to... Instead of the first two chapters, which as far as I'm concerned were complete filler, use those two chapters, move them back into the middle of the story, and have Cassie explain to her parents what Yerks are and all that sort of stuff. That's the stuff I want to see. I spoke to Raptor about this, and I understand it's a kid's book, and kids' books don't like pages and pages of people talking to each other, but reading this as an adult, I would much rather have a whole book of talking than a whole book of bollocks. I'm sorry, but that's just the way my brain works. I like the dog's bollocks, not bollocks. Before anyone says anything, dog's bollocks is... it's British slang for box deluxe, as in the real deal. So before any of you start accusing me of anything sinister, I'm highly offended. And you know what? I'm calling the police on you because I'm offended. If you accuse me of anything, I will claim it as a hate crime. Because you know what? You know what? I'm not only British and henceforth superior in every way, but I'm also Cornish, a minority. And saying that I'm wrong about anything automatically makes you guilty of a hate crime. So if you disagree with me, Medi Pillock, for example, I will call the police and have you sent to the gulags. So anyway, we've rescued Naomi. Rachel says to Jordan and Sarah, oh, we'll rescue Dad at some point. We never get around to that, at least not in this book. And we've not Racheled Cassie's parents. We haven't, murdered them in the middle of the night. We've rescued Cassie's parents, so it's Jake's parents left. And they go to his house and the car's not there. So they're waiting around for a while. Quite a while. And then more of a while. And suddenly they get suspicious. And eventually, Tobias, I think it's Axe actually, sees the car returning home, but there are jeeps, converging. And oh shit, it's happened. Because Tom, of course, is a controller. He's been out with the parents, and for whatever reason, the Yerks have acted incredibly quickly. Jake decided, after the mission at the blood place, we'll take a day off and think about it and come back and make a decision. So it's been 24 hours. And apparently in 24 hours, they've taken this blood and done the entire DNA analyses and then found their targets and invested them. That's bloody quick. Once again, it's believable, but only if you assume that Yeerk DNA technology is far superior to our own. You just have to assume it so it makes sense. Because otherwise it doesn't, because it takes a long time to process DNA. I've done it. I've done it myself with Cobra DNA. I've sequenced Cobra DNA. It ain't a fucking 24-hour job. Not at all. But anyway, with those assumptions well and truly in place, the car comes down towards Jake's house, and Tobias decides, I'm going to fly nearby because I'm fucking stupid. And Jake's mother reaches out with a Dracon beam and fires at him. So she's obviously a Yeerk. And then the weirdest thing happens. She reaches back into the car, and Tom hits the weapon out of her hand, and it lands on the lawn in front of their house. The car carries on, swerves, and then goes back to the house. What? What is happening? Right, firstly, did they forget where they lived? And so they had to swerve around and come back? You'd think they know where they lived. Secondly, why is Tom knocking the weapon out of Jake's mum's hand? She's obviously a controller, so they're on the same side. And she's just fired at this bird, and Tom's like, no, don't do that, you might hit the begonias. And the weapon clatters onto the lawn for the Animorphs to potentially get. Why has he done that? There's no, as far as I can tell, there's no explanation given for this this pseudo-betrayal. He just, for one moment, thinks, no, don't harm the birdies. You might hit the flowers. Bad mother. Fucking sort yourself out. Go back to doing the dishes. But anyway, the Animorphs escape, run away. Jake has a bit of a meltdown about this. And this bit is weird, because remember back in 47, where we got the whole bit of Jake essentially saying Tom doesn't exist anymore. Tom is dead. And that was sort of solidified at the end of the book, where we got that parallel scene with the Vista 3 morph from the first book returning. And go back to my review of book 47 for more details on that. But we'd sort of established that he had left Tom behind, and now his new priority was the war effort. So for him now to start going mental because his family are in danger, I mean, again, I discussed this with Raptor, and I sort of get it. Once again, this book, it's just like, yeah, I sort of get it. I'm not entirely convinced, but I'm roughly in that ballpark. Yeah, it's another one of those. I'm not quite sure if I agree with it or not. Right, so that's the other families out the way. Let's talk about Lauren. So Tobias has gone and flown to her house previously and sort of scouted it out. And it's in this old, run-down neighbourhood, sort of, if you ever play GTA, it's on like the really rough part of town. I picture that sort of scenario in my mind. Because let's face it, in California, if you aren't living in Beverly Hills, you're living in one of these shit houses, as far as I know. If you're in California and you're not rich, why are you still there? I'm just throwing that question out there. So yeah, he's seeked out this house, and she's in there. And she comes out after a little while, and she's got a dog with her. It turned out this dog is called Champ. He's a good boy. And she's blind, and she's got scarring all over her face. So this is a guide dog, a very well-behaved guide dogs are awesome. I mean, how they get so well trained. They are such good boys. But she goes down to a church. She walks down to a church, and her job is to be essentially like a Samaritan, working in a helpline centre. And she's religious, and I do think, is she religious because she's got like vague, fleeting memories of the Ellimist and just assumes that is God? That could be interesting. But yeah, that's where we know her at the moment. So after all the other stuff has gone on, Tobias goes back to this place because he wants to find a way to get Lauren out. And so He scouts the place out and a van has appeared. There's like a woman with a trolley that's just sort of going to and like back and forth in front of Lauren's house, and there's a kid at the bus stop, so the Yeerks are spying on her. So he needs to find a way, and the other Animorphs, to get her out of this. Jake has apparently sent Marco and Axe along, because Jake knows that he's got to try to get Lauren out. So they come up with a vague plan. And they follow her to a 7-Eleven because she's going to do her shopping. And then you get the best line ever from Axe. I absolutely love this line. It's absolute quality. So he's in this. They're all humans in the shops. They've all stayed as or morphed human to go into the shop. And they're essentially bullying her. They're going up to Lauren and trying to mess with her. I forget exactly the reason why, but they eventually just end up taking her into a back room and replacing Champ with Tobias in Champ Morph. But this line here from Axe. She does not understand how menacing we are. He tapped her on the shoulder. You do not know me, but I am a juvenile delinquent. I do not trust authority figures. I probably will not graduate from high school, and statistics say my present rowdiness and vandalism will likely lead to more serious crimes. I am a dangerous fellow, and I am causing mayhem in this store. And I loved that line. That whole line earns a point in itself for this book, so well done, book. But yeah, they take Champ into a back room, tie him up in there. They do this several times. He gets tied up all sorts of places. And Tobias morphs Champ, goes back, and he gets this scene where he's touched for the first time by his mother, and he's just sort of enters this surreal world for a minute, where she's just gone, "What a good boy!" And he's like, "This is exactly what I wanted from my mother." What a good boy! Fuck. Oh yeah, by the way, when he was morphing Champ, he talks about the sense of smell, and he says he smells horse manure on Marco, which, according to the book, must have still been on him from back at Cassie's barn. He's morphed several times since then. Does he carry fecal matter on his body throughout morphing? I imagine so, but I don't know. That just struck me as a bit weird. Right, so Tobias leads Lauren home. So now he's in the house, and he spends a night there, and he's trying to figure out if she's a controller or not. It turns out that she's not. He spends a little time there. Marco and Axe watch the place for a couple of days. But while he's in this house, he spends the night, wakes up in the morning, gets himself a coffee, and he's in his human body. And he's sitting there. She comes down, and he says, "I am your son." And she says, "Oh, hello. Been a while. Forgive the abandonment thing. I'm technically blind, you know. And that's a good enough excuse as any. Sorry, I should be looking round. That's a good excuse." Yeah, fuck it. But yeah, she's basically saying, "I had amnesia. I had a big accident. And so I couldn't even remember what teeth were." And it got me thinking. Remember when the Elmist in the Andalite Chronicle says, "I've erased her memory"? How did he erase her memory? Did he, make a Honda Jazz come the other way on a road one day? And then she got a cut. Is that how the Elmist did it? Rather than just, "Right, your memory's clean. Right, what you're going to do is you're going to headbutt an oncoming truck. That's how you lose your memory." Is that how he did it? Seems a bit dickish, if I'm honest. But she's saying how she didn't want to abandon Tobias because you didn't even know him. And when she eventually came out of hospital, she couldn't find him again because she didn't know where he was living now. So that's essentially how it was. And Tobias is just like, "Yeah, I suppose, but I still wanted you as a mother." All this stuff is actually quite good. This is the best part of this book, this whole Lauren-Tobias thing. Not that I liked Lauren as a character in the Elmist Chronicle. She was obnoxious as anything. As obnoxious as anything. But here, she's all right. I mean, there's nothing really offensive about her. I'm not going to report her to the police. But nor is there anything really exciting about her. She's just a blind woman who happens to be Tobias's mother. She's a plot point, essentially. How are they going to get Lauren out of this building? Because there are Yerks surrounding them. Well, they come up with a plan. So Tobias has gone back to the Hortbudgear Valley and he's seeing how everything's unfolded. The other parents are now there. All the animals are living here. So everybody is now basically in Hortbudgear land. And there's some weird parts here. Obviously, Cassie's parents are great for the Hortbudgear, and the book says they're just sort of following them around like, as the book says, like little puppy dogs, just sort of, where are you going? I want to follow you. And Naomi is, right, this part is weird, because Tobias says the Hortbudgear felt the need for a constitution, so they employed Naomi to do it. And I'm thinking, since when have they wanted a constitution? Since when have they needed a constitution? A constitution is useful for humans because a lot of us are complete dicks and will dick over other people. The Hortbudgear don't seem like that sort of type. They're just sort of content sitting in trees, yeah, doing that. They don't really seek much else apart from that, whereas we're a little bit different. But the Hortbudgear are now saying, we need a constitution. Then suddenly they start arguing with each other. There's the deciduous faction and the coniferous faction. And I think that was that was interesting, because all this time the Hortbudgear have been peace, love and understanding all this time. Then suddenly they're writing a constitution like the Americans, or any government effectively. And then suddenly it's their factions and they're arguing. They're giving it that. Fucking, you fucking twat, you're a knobhead. They're giving it that. And it's just funny. But why would they ask Naomi for a constitution? Because let's be honest, they don't need one. Is it that they asked? Or is it that they asked? Is it that they asked? Part of me thinks that this is all a Toby plan. How do we better integrate ourselves with the humans once the war is over? We try to make ourselves seem more like them. How do we do that? Well, they're Americans. What do Americans like? They're proud of their constitution. So if we, Hortbudgear, come up with something very similar, then the Americans will be like, oh, they've got a constitution just like us. They'll fit in perfectly. They'll fit in perfectly. That's not a very good American accent. They'll fit in perfectly. That's a bit better. So, where the fuck was I? I'm getting too distracted with my own silliness. But yeah, you get it. Toby is basically making this happen so that when... They don't need a constitution, she probably knows that. Naomi's teaching them to read and write as well, because they didn't... There was a funny bit as well here, actually. So they've come up with democracy, and it just becomes a nightmare because they're voting on everything. So she's trying to teach them stuff, and she's struggling to do it, and she says, do I look like a fucking teacher? And so they take a vote on it and say, we vote that you do, in fact, look like a teacher. And, yeah, they don't need it. As far as I'm concerned, it's just Toby trying to better ingratiate herself with the humans post-war. That seems the likely scenario. But anyway, Tobias, Jake, who is now effectively losing control of everything, he has gone low as anything now. He is low as anything. And it's not surprising. Of course, his parents have gone. But not only that, he has lost all control. Now Tobias is coming up with him and says, I know you don't want me to do it, but I'm going to go do this. And Jake's just like, yeah, whatever. Whatever. That's literally what it's like. That's how it comes across. And it's distressing in a way to see Jake, everything's now been taken from him. And like Raptor pointed out to me, this book makes book 41 look even better. You remember in book 41 where Jake had the choice, the abort button or Cassie? Well, now his loved ones are all either traitorous bastards or yerks. So wipe away one half of that equation, what do you have left? The abort button. So this... If you take that into account, you can see where Jake's character is going to go. Fucking brilliant. Book 41. It's got to be one of my favourite books of the series. But anyway, we're talking about book 49 now. What are you doing, Adam? We're talking about the wrong fucking book. Dude! Anyway, Rachel takes something with her. And she takes with her this thing that hopefully is now charged to some degree. The blue box. So she takes this in her bald eagle talons and flies. Go away, Tobias, for a little minute. You stay there, because I need that. They go to a local park, so Lauren's gone off for a walk, tracked by Axe in his Harrier morph, and they go into a tunnel that connects one half of the park to the other. And Tobias is in Champ morph, and so Lauren gets down here, and they quickly do a switcheroo. So they take Champ, swap with Tobias, and they put the blue box in Lauren's bag and send her back on her way. The controller, the woman with the trolley who's been following all this time, sort of sees her coming out the other end and is always like, oh, how peculiar. Took a lot longer than usual to come out the other end there. Rushes home, and obviously this controller who was following was perked enough to think some shit is going down. So this controller is calling in all the forces. So what happens? They get inside, and Tobias says, back in his hawk body now, grab the box out of your bag. And so she does. She grabs the box. And Tobias says, lay your hand flat atop of it. And so she lays her hand flat on top of this blue box, and then suddenly, blue box! And she's got the power to morph. Because, once again, this thing has there's no consistent logic used with it. Book 39 was a complete shit show for this thing, because a buffalo just fucking tapped it and got the morphing power. Now, you have to lay your hand on it and you get the power, but he says specifically, lay your hand flat atop of it. So, is that how it works? You put your hand flat on it, so if you just touched it like that, it wouldn't work. But if you do that, it works. Then did the buffalo do that in book 39? Got his hoof and just like... But no, every other time, there's been an Andalite who's also had to touch it. Remember when they gave David the power, they threw the box to Axe, and he did it because he's an Andalite. And then in book 1, Elfangor placed his hand at the end, and then they all got the jolt. Once again, we're playing with the blue box as if there's no logical consistency behind it. It's wacky. What would have, or could have worked and would have been quite shut up, fiancé! Jesus! Well, what now? What could have worked was if Tobias, once she'd put her hand on it, Tobias reached out a talon and touched it or something, because he has an Andalite heritage, and it would have sort of worked in a way. Yeah, because he would have, according to this book, you maintain your human DNA in your blood even though you're a Nothlit. So when Elfangor became a human Nothlit, he would have presumably still had Andalite DNA. So it would have worked if Tobias had touched it. It would have been consistent so long as you forget that book 39 existed. But no, Tobias doesn't. She just touches it like that. Wait, does that mean... Oh, by the way, this is the gag I was telling you about earlier. This is why I needed the blue box, because there's a gag incoming now. So brace yourselves. Let's begin. Oh, so I don't need an Andalite in order to get the morphing power. Does that mean... I feel the power within me. Bloody hell, I'm Genghis Khan now. So this is what it's like. I'm a noodle. No step on snack. I'll bite you and hurt you, sadly. Well, this is It's actually not as good as I thought it would be. It actually sucks not to have arms and legs. How am I supposed to write angry rants on Twitter without arms? Hold on a minute. I smell something. Oh shit! It's a right! It's been here this whole time! How long? When did this get here? I found it! Oh. Hey! I found it! All I had to do was morph my pet corn snake, and what do you know, Jon Snow? The Animorphs graphic novel, I've got it! Yeah! So expect a review of this probably next week. Anyway, now that that gag is out of the way, let's carry on with the plot. Well, what much is there? Essentially, let's address the next problem. She morphs Red-tailed Hawk by acquiring Tobias, who, let's not forget, is a Nothlit. So now we've established that you can acquire a Nothlit's body, morph. I don't think it's something we've ever said could happen before, but apparently now that's a thing. I'm not sure if it's been contradicted elsewhere. Might have been. I'm not sure. Again, morphing cube madness. It's just the standard. But there's a helicopter incoming and yerks spilling in from everywhere. Controllers. And they zoom out just in time. Two identical red-tailed hawks. Rachel's there as well. She smashes through the building. Because that's Rachel. That's Rachel all over. But they fly out and they're getting chased. They can't get too high and the helicopter's there hovering. It's the granny controller in the helicopter, by the way, because she made a return. Not only is she a scientist in the blood bank, but she's also an excellent helicopter pilot. She's playing the Chapman role today, everybody. Okay, I was surprised it wasn't actually Chapman, but hey-ho. So they fly around and then they get to like a mall with abandoned shops and shit. There's an abandoned toy shop and there's a big chase scene and Marco's there as well and he's in gorilla form, and just as they get trapped in an alleyway he says, right, come here, and he opens a warehouse door to this toy shop and they saunter in and there's a bucket of Hot Wheels cars that Marco spills and the control. It's like a scene out of the TV show, isn't it? Hot Wheels cars and these human controllers come in and whoa! Whoopsie daisy! Falling over all over the bloody place. And yeah, it's a bit sad really. But they get into this warehouse, the helicopters are around there, they don't know quite what to do, but Tobias says, I'm gonna do it myself. And he goes out into the car park where this helicopter's sort of flying around quite low to the ground. And this granny controller is, well, grannies don't have mustaches, but if she did, she'd be twirling it like a fucking good one. And Tobias is just sort of circling around her. She can't get far at him. And she's getting close to knocking her blades or her landing gear on a big sign or whatever. And eventually what happens is he's about to get fired at. And Lauren comes and smacks him out of the way and takes the hit herself. It doesn't kill her, obviously, because plot armor. And Tobias then has enough time to go down to her and have that sort of moment of, you have to demorph. No, Tobias, there's no time. There fucking is, fucking demorph. All right then. And all the while, the granny's up there sort of just looking at them, not taking advantage as bad people tend to do in these sorts of things. And then Tobias flies around again, and the granny copter gets stuck on a big sign, and crashes, bang, wallop, bits flying everywhere, fucking nuclear blast crater in the road. And then in the next chapter, Tobias says, oh, I remember seeing granny controller crawling away from the explosion site. What? Do you remember right, authors, I get it, you're always saying, we never hold back in this series, we gave it full wallop. It's bollocks, isn't it? How does an old gran survive a helicopter explosion? No, you haven't gone all out, have you? Jesus. What if you truly hadn't been holding back and you were going to put whatever the hell you want in this book to make it as realistic as possible? You'd have old gran eyeballs flying through the sky, on fire, guts everywhere. her walking stick would be fucking gone. No. But no, she just crawls out. Oh, safety at last. But they're safe, and Lauren is now back. Because what's happened now is Lauren, who was blind, because it's not something that affects her DNA, when she finally demorphs, she's got her eyesight back and all the scarring is gone. So she's got all that back. And so now they've rescued Champ as well, and they're all back in the Hortbridge Valley, and she's playing Frisbee, and she's enjoying life once again. And Tobias effectively says to Jake, who's seeing all the people around him now in this sort of pseudo-paradise with the Hortbridge, and Jake's the only one there who's basically got none of his family. His family are all gone. Whereas Tobias has now a family. And he says to Jake, we'll still get them. Jake says, well, what use is Tom to Visser one now? Tobias then says, well, it's plenty of use because it's hostage to get you, Jake. And that's where the book ends. That's where the book ends. This book is a real up and downs book because it's got so many positives, but it's also got basically every type of negative an Animorphs book has. I mean, let's just look at the entire latter quarter of this book, okay? What have the Animorphs been doing up until then? They've been rescuing their families. How have they been doing that? They've got the Chi. The Chi are there. And what are the Chi doing? Putting holograms around these entire houses and having trucks driving away and all this sort of stuff. So they did that for Rachel and Cassie's family. They tried it with Jake's. The Chi were there ready to do it. Lauren. Okay? Why are the Chi not helping there? It's not as if it was a sudden decision. They were watching her house for, 2-3 days? There was plenty of time to go up to the Chi and say, right, we're doing it for one more. Did the Chi turn around and say, everybody gets 3? And you've run out. You've had all your favours now. No more. No, that wasn't established. They just forgot that the Chi were there and could have fixed this whole situation without any issue. But no, the reason they didn't hire the Chi for this particular job is because it wouldn't have been as exciting for the plot. And I hate that a lot. Also, why didn't the Yeerks just infest Lauren? Why? Now they are happy enough to camp around the house and watch her. Couldn't they just expend that little energy to infest her? So that if, by any chance, these security measures fail, then they've got an extra security measure, which will actually be an even better trap for the Animorphs. But no, they don't. So both sides here have missed the obvious thing that they need to do just so that the book has an exciting last quarter. But let's face it, that last quarter did not need to happen. It didn't. The only reason it's there is because the book needed a big moment. It needed the because without that, the kids reading would be, oh, there's not enough explosions in this shit. Where's the car chase scene and all that bollocks? I don't need that. Granted, I might have done when I was younger, so fair play in that regard. But now reading it as an adult, it's fucking annoying. Let's delve into the more meaningful stuff here. So I've already discussed Jake and how he's now lost that family unit, essentially, and he's got that big abort button, the metaphorical stuff from book 41. But yeah, now all the others have their family around them and they're living in this Hortbridge paradise place, and he's the only one now who's just sort of sitting there. This is truly going to test Jake, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he copes with this. I really am. And I think he'll be a big part of my Cycle 10 book review thing once I've read book 52. I'm so looking forward to that because Jake is going to be incredibly interesting here going forward. I won't go into it too much because I'll round it up later on. Let's talk about Tobias. Last book, we concluded Rachel's arc. And though Rachel's character has been largely shite throughout the series, book 48 really rounded off her character nicely. And I thought that's a nice little conclusion to it. Not so much a conclusion, but that's the end game for her character, nicely set in place. She doesn't need any more narrations. What is Tobias's conclusion? This is his last book. Okay? So we need some sort of rounding off of the Tobias character. Do we get that? I honestly don't know. I don't know Tobias's arc. Because for up until now, it's always been Tobias getting used to this life as this creature with no family, but who then uses his time to help others, putting others before himself because there's no need to put himself there, and him just getting into that mindset and accepting it. Remember his last book, book 43, we had the whole bit at the start with Billy, I don't know, some kid. And he rather than be in this cozy place, he puts himself in harm's way to rescue this kid, and there's this whole thing about that. All this time, it's been Tobias getting used to this life, and then suddenly, in his last book, oh, he has a family again now. Excuse me, what? How was that the path he was going down? I'm genuinely confused about what they're trying to do with Tobias's character here. There's just seems to be no conclusion to it, or at least not one that's obvious, or one that was expected. I mean, granted, subverted my expectations, but in a totally left field sort of way that just didn't seem to flow with how we'd been going up until this point. I mean, I like the metaphorical sort of stuff, right? So Lauren is very much like Tobias. She's blind to the world, and then suddenly she gets the morphing power, and then she can see, and she experiences life in a completely different way. That's essentially rounding, that's how Tobias is. That's a really good metaphor, and I appreciate how the book does that. But I just don't get it. I don't get it. Tobias suddenly having his mother, I really don't, it doesn't seem to fit where he's been going, and I don't know what else to say, but eventually I will do a Tobias arc video where we'll cover more of this stuff, and this book will be quite prominent in that. So let's cover the scores for this book, because I don't think there's much else I need to cover, and I'm getting a sore throat. Jake's leadership. He recognises his flaws, the problems that he has. He does make some pretty bad decisions, so he goes into the blood bank straight away when he could have rested and prepared, and he delayed and dithered to save the parents when that actually possibly cost the lives, or at least the freedoms, of his parents, and he chastises himself for that quite rightly. It's good that he's able to spot that, but making that mistake in the first place is going to be negative for his score. And then he didn't really do much else. He sort of took a back seat and let Tobias take over. He's lost the plot, really, has Jake at this point, and he hasn't done much. I'm going to give him a 3 for this one, and yeah, I've summed it up quite nicely. The book itself, it is such a mixed bag. The first half is the most average Animorphs book ever. It's literally just Animorphs by the numbers, it seems. The Lauren stuff was very good for the most part, if a bit confusing. Very confusing, as I've been talking about. And there are so many plot conveniences and just nonsense bits, and the morphing cube again is that there's more rules that contradict the other rules. It's a 5 or a 6. Was it that entertaining? Relatively. I'm going to give it a 5. The Diversion gets a 5 out of 10. I was originally planning to give it a 6, but sometimes when I go through these reviews and I talk about it so much, it sort of gives me a different opinion. But yeah, 5 out of 10 for the Diversion. The next book is The Ultimate, which is the last Cassie book. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be a juicy one, I think, so I'm looking forward to it. I shall see you for that. And remember, if you want to donate to my Movember, as I grow the moustache for men's cancer charities, please feel free to do so. I'm going to go charge my equipment properly. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra.